Welcome back to the Judgment Infrastructure Podcast. In episode 6, we examine the 90 days launch protocol. Today, we address something more strategic. Launching a podcast is one milestone. Integration it into your larger platform that is leverage. Today's question: why do most podcasts remain isolated projects instead of becoming authority engine? Let's apply the 2080 rules. Part 1. What most people see. Most creators treat podcasting as a content channel, a brand extension, a visibility layer, a marketing tool. They produce episodes, they publish, they move on. But content without integration does not compound, it expires. Part 2. The critical 20%. Here is the structural 20%. Podcasts fail to compound because they are not connected to asset layer. Voice without documentation is temporary. Documentation without application is static. Application without governance is unstable. Integration is the multiplier. When your podcasts connect to books, courses, consulting, internal system, infrastructure project, it becomes more than media. It becomes architecture. Part 3. 5 Why. Structural diagnosis. Let's apply 5 Why. Why 1. Why do podcasts feel disconnected from business growth? Because episodes do not convert into structured assets. Why 2. Why do episodes not convert? Because there is no extraction workflow. Why 3. Why is there no extraction workflow? Because podcasting was treated as performance, not documentation. Why 4. Why was it treated as performance? Because the goal was audience attention, not intellectual leverage. Why 5. Why was leverage not prioritized? Because long-term positioning was never defined. That is the root. Part 4. The integration architecture. To compound authority, your podcast must sit inside a layer system. Think in layers. Voice layer to books layer to course layer to consulting layer to infrastructure layer. Each layer reinforces the next. If any layer is disconnected, leverage weakens. Part 5. Layer into Kindle Direct Publishing integration. Podcast episodes are raw intellectual capital. Books are structured intellectual asset. If you extract recurring framework from episodes and consolidate them into chapter, episode cluster become volume. Volume build performance. Podcast accelerate visibility. Book stabilize credibility. When both operate together, authority density increase. Part 6. Layer 2. Linked in authority layer. Podcasting build depth. LinkedIn build professional surface visibility. If every episode become a structured 2080 post, a framework breakdown, a governance reflection, your professional ecosystem see consistency. Repetition across platform create positioning clarity. Clarity build recognition. Recognition build authority. Part 7. Layer 3. Internal training layer. There is where most creators miss leverage. Your podcast can become leadership training material, staff onboarding doctrine, governance reinforcement, cultural alignment mechanism. When employees use your vocabulary consistently, decision quality improves. Podcast to training, then training to culture, then culture to stability. Internal integration multiply impact. Part 8. Layer 4. Infrastructure project. If you operate in real-world system, construction, energy, governance, consulting, your podcast becomes documentation of thinking behind execution. That creates transparency, credibility, long-term positioning. When clients see structural thinking repeatedly, trust accelerates. Authority is not declared, it is demonstrated. Part 9. The 2080 application. The 20% that determine 80% of compounding, abstraction workflow, cross-platform reinforcement, asset conversion, consistent doctrine alignment, not content volume, no guest count, not social media growth. Integration multiply impact, isolation limit it. Part 10. Governance lesson. Ask yourself, where does this episode go after publishing? If the answer is nowhere, you are leaking intellectual capital. Every episode must be archived, be indexed, be extractable, be reusable. Infrastructure thinking prevents leakage. Part 11. Compounding model. When integration works, this happens. Podcast build attention, book build authority, course build capability, consulting build revenue, infrastructure build legacy, all under one doctrine, one vocabulary, one positioning. Fragmentation destroy brand coherence. Integration strengthen it. Part 12. Long-term framing. Year 1. Podcasts build recognition. Year 2. Books and courses amplify structure. Year 3. Doctrine become category reference, but only if integration is intentional. Without integration, year 1 visibility, year 2 plateau, year 2 drift, year 3 drift. With integration, year 1 foundation, year 2 compounding, year 3 authority. Part 13. Practical implementation. To integrate your podcast, first extract 2080 insight into written form weekly. Second, identify recurring framework quarterly. Third, consolidate into structured manuscript annually. Fourth, align LinkedIn and newsletter vocabulary. Fifth, convert selected episodes into internal training modules. Integration must be scheduled, not assumed. Closing principle. Most podcasts operate alone. Few operate within system. Isolation produces efforts. Integration produces leverage. If your voice connects to documentation, documentation connects to training, training connects to execution, you are building infrastructure. Podcasting without integration is media. Podcasting with integration is authority architecture. Next week, we will analyze civilization level brand positioning, moving from creator to category. Until then, integrate before expanding, extract before publishing, connect before scaling. This is the Judgment Infrastructure Podcast.